Hi, I'm Dr. John Van Epp, and this is Dr. Morgan Cutlip. And welcome to the #Relationship Goals series. We are so excited to partner with Northview Church over the next 6 weeks as we focus on helping you develop an even greater marriage relationship.
You know, there are few things in your life more important than your relationships. Your relationship with God, with your partner, with your kids, and with those in your church and those in the world.
You know, in fact, Jesus summarized all of the law and prophets in just 2 relationships. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So let us begin with telling you a little bit about our relationship. So for full disclosure, this is my daughter.
Yes, and I've been working with you basically since I was in grade school. And it really all started when a couple times a year when I was around 6 or 7, you would take me on a special day with Dad to your PhD classes. And I think pretty much I sat there and ate candy and pretended to take notes. But
That's all I was doing too.
But I guess, something took because it became a passion and a calling for me as I pursued my master's and my PhD work focused on healthy relationships. In my clinical work, I found myself working with so many clients who were hungry for clear guidance and direction in the area of relationships. And that just further confirmed for me that I was following the right path.
Absolutely. So a little bit about my background. I started my career by going to seminary while planting a non-denominational church in Ohio in the early 1980s. As a pastor, I was finding myself frequently in a position of counseling hurting couples, which really led me down a path of pursuing a master's and PhD in counseling psychology. The more I counseled couples struggling with relationships, and the more I studied the research about close relationships, I began to see some very clear patterns develop between people who thrived in relationships versus those people who perpetually struggled. And a primary difference was that many couples did not have a clear plan for how to actively run their relationships. However, they did have a plan for running almost every other area of their relationship in their marriage, their finances, their work schedules, the activities of their kids, the retirement, but their relationship, other than maybe a date night, no clear plan. So I organized all that research and theory about major relationship bonds into a very practical and interactive model that we're going to be sharing with you all through this series. I figured that if couples could visualize exactly what is happening in their relationship, then they would be better able to actively run their relationship. Our hope for you is that once you understand how this model describes what's going on in your relationship, you will see the tremendous ways that it can empower you to better run your relationship. So let us introduce this model and really how you can use it.
So this model that you developed is called the Relationship Attachment Model, or RAM for short. And it's made up of 5 connections, or you can call them bonds, that occur in your relationship. And these bonds work together to contribute your overall feeling of closeness. So in other words, your relationship is made up of 5 specific connections. As we briefly explain them, you'll see that all 5 of these relationship bonds are a major source of your feelings of closeness and that they naturally fluctuate. So the first connection or bond is how you know each other. This has to do with the ways that you talk together, what you share with each other, how you keep up to speed on what's going on in each other's lives. Now, this bond obviously contributes to your feelings of closeness, but there are times when you have less time to talk and your level of no drops. During those times, you can feel more distant, like 2 ships passing in the night. But when you find time to catch up, then your feelings of closeness will then also increase.
The second major bond in your relationship is trust. This too makes you feel very secure, confident, safe, and is a major contributor to how you feel close. So usually we think of the big ticket items of trust, but there's lots of small trust issues in a marriage, like, can I trust you to do the dishes, or put them in the dishwasher, or fill the car up with gas, or listen to me when I'm upset and I need to talk. To define trust more specifically, trust is a feeling of confidence that actually comes from what you think of your spouse. So see if this makes sense. When you're focusing on some ways that your partner has not fulfilled your expectations, then you can slip into a pretty bad trust attitude. On the RAM, that would be represented by your trust level dropping a little bit. And I'm sure that even when that happens, your feeling of closeness changes a little as well. But then when you shift your focus, remember all of the wonderful qualities of your spouse, your attitude of trust starts coming back up. So this focusing, this thinking about your partner, produces feelings of confidence, or what we call trust. And it's coming from what we're calling this trust picture.
So the next major bond in your marriage relationship is how you are able to rely on each other. This is more your trust in action. So if trust is about what you believe or think of your spouse, then rely is more about how you interact or take care of your spouse. You rely on your spouse to meet your needs, to help you take care of the kids, take care of the house, or even just work together. And when your spouse goes out of their way to do something really meaningful for you, your reliance goes up and you feel a lot closer. But there are those times when your partner slips up and isn't there for you in the ways you expected or even the ways that you wanted. And at those times, your level of rely will drop.
So the fourth bond is your commitment. And when you think of commitment, there are levels of commitment tucked in the label we give our relationships. Like if we say, this is an acquaintance, or we're just friends, or we're going together exclusive, or we're engaged, or even we're married, which is the highest level of commitment. So commitment seems to be embedded in that label, but it's really beyond just a label. Commitment has to do with how determined you are to persevere through the tough times, how invested you are in your relationship, how much of a priority you make your relationship. There is this practical side of commitment that says, listen, I am really putting you first. I am committed to you, and I'm making sure that you know that. So when you get out of balance and make other commitments, for example, more of a priority than your marriage relationship, it would be as if the commitment in your marriage starts to drop on a practical side. But then when you start to put your relationship higher, that commitment level also goes up.
Yeah. So the fifth relationship bond is what we call touch. And touch can refer to non-sexual affection as well as sexual interactions. And so your sexual relationship, like each of the other four relationship bonds, can create intense feelings of closeness and connection in your relationships. And also like the other four, your sexual relationship fluctuates, altering the feelings of closeness.
Now what I found is that there were volumes, like entire library sections, on each one of these 5 areas, just on their own, because there are major connections or bonds in your relationship. But when you put them all together, you actually have a comprehensive picture of what is going on in your relationship. And it helps you to understand kind of the profile of where you are. I want to suggest that this model is a little bit like a GPS system. It can help you locate exactly where you are in your relationship and then help you to map out what you need to do to get where you want to be. Hey, our conversations have dropped a little bit. We've been busy. Our no is lacking. So listen, let's sit down. Let's have some time together and let's catch up on the no. Or, you've been really busy. You've got this promotion going on and we haven't been able to meet each other's needs, or the kids have been really keeping us busy and preoccupied. So all of a sudden, how we rely on taking care of each other, being there for each other, meeting each other's needs has actually dropped a little bit. What do we need to do? Let's locate where we are, determine what we need to do to map out to bring these levels back up.
You could actually just hang that mini RAM right on the fridge, so it's a constant gauge for where you are and where you need to go. So if you get up in the morning and the no is a little low, you understand what you need to do. And if the trust is kind of looking a little bit shaky, you got to get to work.
And if your touch is actually missing, then you definitely need to have a conversation. The reality is, relationships can be so confusing and unclear, and the RAM helps you to define what actually is happening in the relationship. And what you can define, you can realign.
So this RAM also helps to portray the 3 laws of relationships. The first is the law of diminishing returns. There's a limited shelf life to each of these bonds in your relationship, and life will naturally deflate each of these bonds of your relationship. So it's normal that one or more of these bonds will drop. You could say it's normal to become imbalanced in your relationship. Bottom line, you cannot escape it. Life will mess you up.
I work as a firefighter, so I have 24-hour shifts that I have to do. And if I work any extra overtime, I might be gone for 36 to 48 hours. So that's probably when I've gotten out of balance, because I'm trying to go out and make money, take care of the family, but at the same time, I have a family at home that still needs me, children, wife.
And I think we added it up, and I was involved in 11 different things besides work, and I was typically in charge of whatever I was involved in. So for me, it was community stuff, then it was our career, and then it was family.
I get really frustrated too about kids' sports when you've got 3 boys in sports and they're in 3 different towns at the same time doing 3 different baseball games, and then you feel like a weekend where you should be able to spend some time together, you can't. That's really frustrating to me.
For us, feel most out of balance when we're overcommitted.
Yeah.
We have very, very busy lives, 3 active children, and when our schedules get overwhelmed with stuff, activities, appointments, engagements, we're just out of sync. We are literally 2 ships passing in the night, and there's weeks that go by where we don't even sit down for a family meal.
A time in my marriage where my husband and I were really out of balance was right after we had our first baby. And right there, that's enough to throw a marriage kind of out of balance. But then he got a job promotion, and then we had to move across the country for that job promotion. So that was a pretty intense time for us.
It's just normal for life to imbalance us, but these normal imbalances we've been talking about don't even take into account shortcomings or failures that may occur in a marriage relationship. One thing you can definitely count on as your marriage continues through life, it is normal for your relationship to get out of balance. But listen, the danger is not becoming imbalanced, but staying imbalanced. This is a second law of your relationships. We will call it the law of slow leaks. This law simply states that when your relationship gets out of balance, if it stays too long, a slow leak will either flatten your relationship or eventually lead to a big blowout.
If relationships do not run themselves, then they are not self-correcting either. It's normal that things in life will deflate one or more of the bonds in your relationship. But if you're not paying attention to your relationship, then that slow leak can really create a vulnerability.
Too many couples live by what I call the starvation principle. Only eat when starving. What this looks like in a marriage is that here's lots of busyness going on. Kids stuff, house stuff, job stuff, church stuff, life stuff. And then, like we said in the beginning of the session, most couples don't necessarily have a plan for running their relationship. They run all that other stuff, the schedules for the kids, the budget, the work hours, but no plan for their relationship bonds.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, one of the 2 partners, and often I'd say it's the wife, realizes that she is starving for a bit of adult time, some romantic time with her husband.
Things are out of balance.
Right, so then she approaches her husband, we have got to get some us time.
Oh, that's right. And so they decide to go out. So at first it kind of feels like they're strangers. It's been so long since they've talked, they don't even know what to talk about. But as the evening continues, they start reconnecting. They have some talking, some laughing, some flirting. And then when they head home, after finally feeling like they're back in their relationship again, everything's kind of back to normal. These levels have been moving back up, right? So as they get home, they pull in their driveway, they look at that house where all the kids are and all that busy life is, and they look at each other, and I find every couple says the exact same thing. We have got to do this more often. But then they go in the house, the craziness of their lives all kicks right back in, and next thing you know, they all get out of balance and don't actually take care of their relationship until they're starving again.
So true. Well, this leads us right up to the last law, which is the one key to relationship success, and that's the Law of Frequent Realignments. The key to a successful relationship is to intentionally and regularly realign your imbalances. This means you need to identify what is deflated a little bit, and then you gotta make a plan for bringing that area up back to full strength. This course will have lots of things that you'll learn and practice and hopefully are inspired to keep growing in your marriage relationship. But if there was only one takeaway for the entire course, it would be for you to have frequent huddles. A huddle is your couple planning meeting, where you use the RAM as the framework for a brief 20-minute planning meeting. Like we said earlier, this RAM is like your relationship GPS. So we're going to give you a 5-step plan to regularly realign your relationship in your couple huddle.
You know, a favorite verse of mine is found in the New Testament in the book of Philippians. And it reads, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." And if it just stopped there, it would be a bit daunting, you know? But it goes on to say, "For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and do of his good pleasure." I like this verse because it really captures the fact that God wants to collaborate with us in our relationship, even our relationship with him. He wants to work in us, but he also wants us to work out that relationship. On the one hand, he is empowering us to run our relationships, but on the other hand, he is expecting us to do something, to take some responsibility. He expects us to do our part. You know, if you just replace that word salvation with relationship to God, then you could see that relationships are these two-way streets, even between you and God. For it would read, "Work out your own relationship to God with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and do of his good pleasure." In other words, God's working in you, but he wants you to do your part. In a similar way, I think it's not too much liberty with that passage to put in just about any relationship and see this principle applying. For example, work out your own relationship in marriage with fear and trembling. Some of you are like, I've been there, done that. But the reality is, God is at work in that relationship marriage to really will and do of his good pleasure. This collaboration is, God wants to empower you to work out your marriage relationship. He doesn't want to do all the work for you, and he doesn't want you to do it without his involvement. So our entire series will be about helping you to understand your relationship and to use this RAM model to define exactly where you are in your relationship, where there are some imbalances, what you need to do, and to actually have a plan how to strengthen those bonds that life just naturally has weakened. To be intentional and active about running your marriage relationship while God continues to will and do of his good pleasure in your lives together.